I heard the other day about the concept of being an agentic optimist. I nearly lost my mind. I was like, what is that? It sounds kind of cool. Well, a little bit of research later, and I found out that an agentic optimist is somebody who believes in a positive and hopeful future, but understands that they are the ones that will get them there. I realized at that moment that this has been the guiding light for my career, for getting through hard times, for picking myself up when I was down, and all of the things. So join me as we talk about how to be an agentic optimist and how ultimately it's the thing that manifests the magic, also known as serendipity. See you there. Welcome. Awesome to see all of your faces this morning. Okay, so let me jump into the deep end because I want to talk about stepsisters, specifically the ones in our lovely Cinderella story. Because here's what I think about the stepsisters. I think they were given a whole bunch of stories about who they are and how they could think and all of those sorts of things. And they are a true manifestation of that awfully mean person who lives in your head. They are the ones who say you can't belong. They're the ones who say people will judge you. They're the ones who say you have to follow the rules. They're also the ones who say other people get to determine my future. And while I actually have real stepsisters who aren't like this at all, I think the manifestation of stepsisters, when I'm thinking about my whole Cinderella thing, is that we all have our own stepsister living in our head saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, because that's not how the rules work. This is not how things should happen. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm not sure I liked the end of the story that the stepsisters got. I think there's in some cases they got their eyes plucked out by birds or something horrifying. I personally, well, I have married my prince, but I'd say I'm the royal family member and he was the lucky one. Personally, I prefer Cinderella's ending. I prefer the idea of creating my own happily ever after. And if you look at the thread of the Cinderella story, you'll notice that while she absolutely listens to the stepmother voice in her head, stepsister voice in her head, and sadly the stepmothers too, as she moves through the character arc of the story, she starts to tap into her own confidence and starts to be what I like to call an agentic optimist, which in turn creates all the awesome things. And all the awesome things manifests as serendipity. And that is the magic. And that, my friends, is what we're going to talk about today. And yes, I know none of you are actually Cinderella and you are all here because you are going on a professional journey. But as you know, I like to use the Cinderella story because I think it's universal. And it brings a really dramatically different story to life around how to navigate your profession and how I think we all, if you are in the I need to do better stage, should take a page out of Cinderella's book, or B, and I think even better, I think the moral of the Cinderella story is we should all grow up to be fairy godmothers, and that is actually the winning opportunity of them all, right? So if you haven't already, decide you want to be a fairy godmother. It's the best job ever. Let me just tell you that already. So what are we going to talk about today? So just as a reminder, for those of you that haven't been to one of the shows before, it is awesome to see some familiar faces. And for those of you watching on YouTube, you got a bit of an intro. We are now going to go into how are we going to talk about this idea of agentic optimism, what it is, how to create your own serendipity, And as always, Kelly, who is there, I'm going to get this right eventually, will be dropping the learning guide in the chat if you haven't downloaded it already. The learning guide goes with this show with the questions and worksheets and challenges and activities that you can do, and ways that you can connect back with me throughout them. There's actually 3 in every single learning guide. We're still, I will open figuring out how to do the connect back with me and what it is we're doing, but we have all sorts of great things in plan for those. So start using the learning guides. They're also, by the way, a really awesome way to support this program and hold, frankly, yourself accountable to doing the work. Because as you know, I believe it's in the doing that the magic starts to happen. And so make sure you download the learning guide to go along with this, because I am going to be talking through this as well. Okay, so what is this agentic optimism thing? How do you start thinking about it? Well, let me actually define it to start with. Actually, just as a show of hand, has anybody heard of the expression? Did anybody listen to the podcast I listened to and went, oh, what is that? I have to learn more? No, I'm gonna take no hands, as you're all like, I've never heard of this thing before. I know, up until recently, me either. And I was like, what is an agentic optimist? Because here's the thing, I have been told most of my life that I am a overly optimistic person. And all of my pessimistic friends are all like, oh, Joanna, you're a bit like Pollyanna and everything's going to work out. And you go on about, oh, it's all going to be good. Well, yeah, it is all going to be good, because guess what? I make it so. Because an agentic optimist, and this is how they define it, is somebody who believes in a positive future, but understands that that positive future is a result of their actions. Now, I am going to say I do not live in a third world country or all of the other things that life can throw out. We are talking about the knowledge working world. And if you are a part of the knowledge working world, then you can be an agentic optimist too. There is opportunity out there, and it's what you make for yourself. And I think, especially in this incredibly ambiguous times that we are all in right now, now is the time to take control of your future and be the person who drives things forward. Because every rule in the book, other than the don't kill people, don't steal from people, like the basics, every rule in the book is up for questioning. Every single one of them. How we do work, how people get promoted, how people get opportunities, how people get hired, fill in the blank. The how we are doing that is shifting and evolving. And the people who get ahead of figuring out how to navigate that new space faster will have the advantage. The same way that, up until maybe now, being in Silicon Valley meant you had an advantage in the technology race and moving forward. I think that one's up for debate, especially with the remote work we're living in. But all of that is about getting ahead. And I come back to, again, my Cinderella story. When you are the one driving things forward, you can then decide what it is you want to do, as opposed to allowing, in Cinderella's case, a stepmother to decide for you. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm guessing that you have felt prouder, more satisfied, more all of the words when you have chosen a future versus when somebody else has chosen it for you. So that is what an agentic optimist. How many of you are like, oh, I'm already an agentic optimist, sign me up, I'm in? Awesome. Yeah, you're my people, which is why you're all here. But I know some of you are like, okay, so that's awesome. I want to be that. How do I be that? But there's really 3 major phases, I think, in how to basically manifest serendipity, which in my world is magic. Because that's when, who is it? Oprah said, luck happens when timing and preparedness meet. Serendipity is the same thing. And this is the agentic optimism, I think, is the fuel to do this. So the first thing I always ask people when they are thinking about, okay, awesome, lovely, I'm in, how do I do this? Is to think about my favorite question, which is, what is your ball? So just as a reminder, Cinderella did not say to the fairy godmother, I want to live happily ever after, I want to marry the prince. That wasn't even part of the initial goal. All she wanted to do was go to the ball and potentially dance with the prince, and understood that she needed a slightly new kit to get there. She actually couldn't figure out how to get to the ball at all, and the fairy godmother came in and sorted that whole situation out. But what I mean by your ball is, like, what is the next phase for you? And the next phase for you, I find, is more focused when you are thinking about what it is you are ambitious for. And so many of us, while we sit here and say, like, I'm ambitious, I can't even speak today, ambitious for a title change, or what lots of people just call growth. What we're actually saying is, I'm ambitious to be able to play a bigger game. I'm ambitious to have more impact in the work that I'm doing. I'm more ambitious to learn more, so that I can add to my toolkit. I'm ambitious to experiment more. If you really think about the last time you were ambitious, last time you were really ambitious for something, it's because you were trying to do something usually bigger than you, that was full of ambiguity, that didn't necessarily have labels and all of those sorts of things. So the first thing I asked is, what are you ambitious for? And if you don't know, like, go back to the last time you were ambitious and think about that moment and say, okay, so what were the drivers there? Because it's rarely just title, which is just a label, or this, what I call the vagary of growth. I just want to grow is not a great answer to that. I just want to grow is the hiring equivalent of, what is it you want to do for your career? Well, I don't know. It depends. Nobody can help you with what it depends. So really have a honest conversation with yourself around what it is you're ambitious for. Because the other thing that ambition does is, when the stepsisters come along and start going, no, they will judge you, and the rules say you can't do that, and all of the other nonsense known as that voice in your head, when all of that is happening on, when you are anchored into your own ambition, you can actually have a conversation back with those girls and say, no, 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 I'm going to do it anyway. Because how many of you have been told you can't do something and you were like, well, I'm going to do it anyway? Right? And how many of you were like, those are your proud moments. Those are the moments. And how many of you have had serendipity happen because you did it anyway? Yeah, me too. So think about your ambition and what it is you want to do. Then you look at your current state and go, okay, so if this is my ambition, I don't have fairy godmother magic just to go da-da-da and change everything. And I want to remind you, like, we think about what the fairy godmother did with Cinderella. She fixed her hair. She gave her great footwear. She got a nice frock. She changed the mice and the lizards and all of the various different characters into her horse and footman. She created the carriage. She actually put a time gate. She did a whole bunch of magic. And in reality, I mean, let's be real, magic, well, I think magic does exist, but that's a whole different story for a different day. The magic is there, actually can be done in little tiny, teeny increments. And sitting there and saying, like, what is the one thing that I can control? What is the one thing that my stepmother character, somebody else who's saying, no, you can't do this, or even the prince character going, I don't even know you exist. What is the one thing you can control, and you could change or shift? So as an example, we actually see that in the Cinderella story, where in some of them, she goes out for a ride and runs into the prince, and they actually meet before the party itself. It's a tiny thing. She was clearly breaking the rules and getting out there and not working super hard and doing all the things that were on her to-do list and being a really good employee. She was like, no, I'm going to create some me time because I need some self-care and I need to go out and ride my horse and all of those sorts of things. So that was her opportunity to change the one thing she could control. I would also say the other thing that she took control of was when she met her fairy godmother, when the magic started to happen, she absolutely stepped into control. Like, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but if somebody came to me and said, well, we need to have you get in this carriage that used to be a pumpkin and it's going to be fine, I'd be like, yeah, I need to see that magic a couple of times because that's some crazy stuff. I'm not getting inside the pumpkin. Plus, I don't like pumpkins very much. So can we please like either use a different vegetable or just show me that again so I can be a bit of a believer? She was all like, absolutely, getting in the pumpkin, off I go, fantastic. She really was like, yes, how am I going to take control of it? The third piece was she did layer in the optimistic. Like, what you never heard from Cinderella throughout the entire story was this idea that anybody other than the stepmother would say no to her. Like, imagine for a second, I said to you, I'm trying to think of an example. Imagine for a second somebody gave you a really amazing opportunity, one that would really stretch you professionally, one that your inner stepsister head says, ooh, you're not really qualified for that, one that would potentially mean that you would be in the public eye. How many of you would be nervous about saying yes to that opportunity, realistically? Maybe a little bit. I'll tell you, I used to run a project a couple of years ago where we highlighted different women every week who were doing amazing things. On average, 50% of them did not participate because they were worried that they weren't qualified or they shouldn't do. They actually worried about the no's as opposed to the yeses. And so I always ask the question, like, imagine for a second in your situation, whatever it might be, what would happen if everybody said yes to the future you? What would change? That circles back beautifully to the ambition question as well. So as you're thinking about, well, what will they say yes to? What if I said yes to this? What would change in the future? And if you haven't read Shonda Rhimes's book, A Year of Yes, she has a beautiful example of saying yes to unique opportunities. Now, I also learned recently about a young man who actually let an algorithm decide for him and did a year of yes around an algorithm, and is now getting to speak on the TED stage about it and all sorts of good sort of stuff. But that whole, how do you think about what would change if somebody said yes, actually starts to help you plan your future and create serendipity. So that is exercise number one. Have a bit of a self-reflection on this whole conversation. Exercise number two is coming in and saying, okay, if any of this makes you feel nervous or you're like, Joanna, that's awesome. I'm so glad you're super confident and you're going to go out and just do this stuff. If any of this makes you nervous or anything makes you say, well, hang on a second, how do I do this in a small way so I don't get freaked out? The other recommendation I have when I come back to creating serendipity, being an agentic optimist, is an agentic optimist is actually also a professional fairy godmother. And so the other challenge I throw out to you guys is to sit here and say, okay, why not, if you're worried about doing it for yourself, do it for somebody else. Go find somebody who could use a little bit of your fairy godmother magic. Now, let me caveat, this does not need to be somebody who is less than you. One of my favorite set of Cinderellas for me to help on a regular basis are my peers, because often the more senior somebody is in an organization, the less likely they are to ask for help. And the reality is the more social impact you can have in doing that. So figure out who's your Cinderella, who's the person that you can either be generous with, you can amplify, You can do all sorts of things, and I have some examples I'm going to give you in the third challenge. Figure out who that is, figure out who you can connect them with, what opportunity, what idea, because a prince is not necessarily a guy who needs to rescue you and marry you. Your prince in the Cinderella story is an idea, is an opportunity, is another person, is some way to create serendipity in the future, and then use your magic. And I come back to this simple idea that your magic is a combination of your potential, your ability to do things tomorrow, plus your amplification factor. And your amplification factor is your network, is the people that you know that you can connect with other people, and your generosity. This is none of these adventures, no serendipity happens in a solo adventure. It's all about who are the people you need to know, how can you be generous with them, and what can you do with them tomorrow? You apply that magic on a regular basis, and the results start to happen. As a team member, those same things apply. If I was to layer generosity, amplification, and potentialism, we're talking about your skills, your behaviors, and your potential. Your value within an organization is both those things. And so thinking about how you can apply your skills, your behaviors, your potential to your professional Cinderella allows you then to actually practice creating serendipity for others. And I can say without any shadow of a doubt, and I'm guessing the same thing is for you, is that when you have already done this in the past, you just didn't know you were doing it, and it has already rewarded you in the past. There is a secret in the magic halls, apparently, that if you do magic for good, it will amplify the good for you. If you do magic for bad, it actually comes back and gets you 3 times. And I know out there in the big wide world, certainly we've seen people wielding some not so awesome magic out there. And it doesn't seem to come back and get them, but I believe that it does eventually. And I do believe in creating serendipity for others as an act of agentic optimism for yourself. And my guess is if you go back and say, look, when did I do this for myself and what happened? You will find that not only did it create opportunities for you, but it created opportunities for others in a really big way. Which brings me to the fourth part of this, which is how can you apply your magic? What are the ways that you can do that? And I think there's really 4 very simple places you can do that. One is there potential in something that you can see? Now, if you've been to any of my shows, which I know a lot of you guys have, you will already know that potential in its definition is in the eye of the beholder. And so you can't often see your own potential or the potential in a situation. So do you see a potential in an idea, a situation, or a person that you can highlight to them? Like imagine for a second, and this is literally how easy creating magic is. You can say to somebody, look, super awesome person, the potential I see in you is X. And how can I help other people learn about that? Super easy way to do that. The same thing, slightly nuanced, is if you are ambitious for somebody. I am a super fan of finding people I am ambitious for and being ambitious for others. And the difference between potentialism and ambition is potentialism is here's the possibility of you. Ambition is here's what I want for you. Imagine again, you went to somebody who you were like, God, they're awesome and they've got all sorts of good stuff. I'm ambitious for you and this is how I'm ambitious for you. And how can I help you manifest that ambition? Super powerful conversation to have with somebody. Those are very simple one-on-one conversations. Once you get confident doing those 2 things, you can then become an amplifier and amplify people. Amplifying people in this day and age through all sorts of different mediums is so simple. I see Dawn amplify ideas and people on LinkedIn all the time. I know I've seen Holly amplify ideas I've seen on, I've written on LinkedIn before. I had a whole bunch of people amplify something I just shared on Twitter, but you can also have that in conversations within your network. Like, think about the last time that you shared why somebody else was brilliant in a conversation. One of my favorite amplification activities to do, which absolutely creates serendipity and is absolutely anchored in agentic optimism, is introducing people who should know each other. I just introduced the chief data officer of Maersk, the shipping company, with a individual who is getting, I hope, an opportunity in a box manufacturing organization, a very, very big one. And because of their similar roles in what it is they do, the fact that they are both women in incredibly male-dominated industries, and the fact that they're just genuinely cool people, I was like, look, I have a hunch that you guys should know each other. And I gave them both a tiny bit of a Joanna introduction on who they were and what they were all about. And then I said, off you go and go have fun. I have no doubt they are going to have an amazing conversation about themselves. Here's where the serendipity happened. My friend at Maersk, who I have not spoken to in probably a year and a half, reached back out to me, and she was like, first of all, thank you so much for this introduction. It's always great to meet other women in the industry. And she said, second of all, I've been thinking about you and I have an idea. When can we get on the phone? Complete manifestation. Like, this would not have happened because we all have the to-do list. We all have the things to do. This would not have happened had I not been proactively optimistic about this relationship with two people. The reality is you all have social capital, you all have networks, and you all have the ability to connect people. And who cares if they do nothing with it? You have no idea what's going to manifest from these conversations. Put them out there, see what happens, and you'll find that serendipity comes back. And then last but not least, you all know my favorite, which is the every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you are not in. You are all in rooms. You are all in rooms, and you all have the opportunity to speak up for others. It is probably one of the most powerful things you can do, because the other thing that speaking up about others and their potential and their ambitions means that you actually start to build a reputation as somebody who knows where the talent lies. And again, by being generous to others, you're actually lifting yourself, which is why the whole agentic optimism, thinking positively about yourself, about others, and moving through these steps really help not only you, but help others along the way. It is this beautiful combination of optimism and being agentic that manifests in magic and action, because you're the person who makes this happen. And again, I come back to, you all waved your hand up there when you were like, when I did the thing, I was super proud of myself and did all of the magic. These are the key pieces. And I shared my one example today of getting to have a chat with the folks at Maersk about something. I don't know what yet. But this machine of optimism, creating serendipity and generosity absolutely delivers. Just this week, I have had one job offer for a job that does not have a job description or anything. Literally, the conversation, I was talking with somebody in my network, and they have gotten a very cool job. And she was like, why don't you come work with me? It would be awesome. Like, that was literally how the job offer was offered. Now, don't worry, I'm not quitting my job. I absolutely love what I'm going to do. When I was talking with Kelly about it earlier, she was all like, no, you didn't decide to say yes, did you? And I was like, of course not. But this is an example. Like, the person who offered it to me knows I have a company and I'm doing this, and we are trying to get everybody to talk about the future you, and yet she still offered me a job. This is how it happens. That's the first one. I've had one beyond the Maersk one, really fantastic business opportunity happen this week. One that is really setting the team up fantastically for this year. Because FYI, while I know you all show up to the Friday shows and you're like, maybe I'll do the learning guide. I hope you will. This is how you support the Joanna and the Kelly and the people behind the scenes here. I'd say the significant majority of the work that I do is actually with teams and organizations at companies. And so we are working with a very well-known company here in the Bay Area and doing some really magical stuff with their with the leadership team there. And so I'm super excited about that. And what also manifested was 2 very unique and very personal endorsements for my work. Because I started out, and in both cases, and I was talking to them both just yesterday, in both cases, they said, oh, Joanna, you said X. And I was thinking X, but then I didn't do X. And then you said X again. And then connected me to somebody to make X easy. So I did it. And the reality is you were right. And then this other magical, one of them has actually started a brand new business. She was absolutely thrilled to bits because she's like, I had no idea I would be this busy. I'm so glad I've started my company, and I'm actually now going to have to hire somebody because I've got too much business that I can handle. And I was like, fantastic for her. And then another person who has been looking for a new job, who actually got a job this week, based on a very simple X conversation. This is what the catalyst that happens. And I sit here and I go, wouldn't you all want today a job opportunity that you could say no to, a business opportunity within your company, and 2 endorsements? Like, good Lord, it's not that hard, folks. This is, I actually, Priscilla McKinney of Little Bird Marketing is known for saying that generosity is the new competitive edge. She is 100% right. Did you see what I just did there? I just amplified somebody else, giving her credit for her awesome idea. Very simple. My hope is that you will look up Priscilla McKinney on LinkedIn, because she is a genius on LinkedIn and she shares a ton of information on how to be a LinkedIn guru. That's how it will happen. And I have no doubt that this little conversation I just had with you about Priscilla will actually pay back in the long term. And it is not done because I want Priscilla to owe me anything by any stretch of the imagination. It is purely done for the fact that A, I think she's awesome and I see her potential and I am ambitious for her. But B, I think this is actually the competitive edge of the future. And especially when I talk to people like all of you guys, it is absolutely where I see a shift in how we work, how we treat each other at work, and how we can all manifest our ambitions in the future. So that is my lecture for today on Agentic Optimism. All of that information and the exercises and challenges and everything else is included in the learning guide that Kelly shared with you earlier. Also, if any of you are like, wait a second, you come into companies and teams and do programs with my company, we're also going to drop the link to the Contact Us page in the chat as well from the website. It's a little bit more complicated than a single, this is what we do, because every engagement with my clients is bespoke. Every single time we come in and really try to understand, what is the dynamic in the organization, what it is you're trying to shift, et cetera, and then come in and do something that really aligns with how to have more engaged and ambitious and potentialist and all of the words team members in your organization. It is not about teaching everybody how to quit their job. It's we have a lot of fun doing those sorts of things. So if you are interested, let us know who we need to talk to and we will make that happen. Which then brings me to magic time, which is where we are for the day. Kelly, can you roll the
magic wheel?
And tell me, who is our winner this week?
So today's winner of the one-on-one private session with you is Holly Uber.
Woohoo! Yay, Holly. Well, I am super excited in getting to talk to you because I have seen you lurking on the LinkedIn. I appreciate your clicks and comments and shares, and we will be chatting about that. Kelly's going to be sending you instructions on what to expect and how to schedule your session. For those of you that are new or just watching on YouTube, if you come to the show, your name gets put in the hat and we pull out one person every week who gets to have a 30-minute one-on-one session with us. So there's a link in the comments on how to come to the show. You too can be like the awesome Dawn who comes every week for her, and I quote her, self-care, which made me very happy that you come every week for that. We're glad to see you. I know we missed you last week. We know you had other things going on. It's nice to see you back. So join us on the show every week where we do all of these. Just as a reminder, for coming up to next week, we are going to be doing our monthly Future You show where we talk about the basics of future you thinking. We will absolutely be doing some of my famous live transformations, how to navigate the future you, how to choose the future you. As I said, we've got the Serendipity learning guide that is online. And then if you want team programming, you can also just email us at hello@theamplify.lab with information or questions. If you do nothing from this show, take that make an introduction idea and do something today. It's what I call intentional serendipity, and just to see what happens. It's a very little thing, because it's when we do something boldly that things change. And I'm just going to share my last piece with Cinderella. She did not sneak in the side door of the ballroom. She made the big entrance down the grand staircase so people could see her. And if we don't allow people to see and hear us, they don't know who we are. And if they don't know who we are, they can't choose us. And so by being generous, being an agentic optimist, making serendipity for others, you're actually giving other people opportunity to hear you and see you. And this is the magic of serendipity. This is the magic which will actually help you create the future you that you want. So that is today's show. Again, for those of you that are on YouTube, if you want to come to a future show, if you've got questions or what have you, there are links in the show notes below. And we will see you again next week. For those, ultimately, we're here to help you figure out how to teach other people who the future you is so that you can be you in the future. Because the clearer you are about who you are, what you want, and teach other people why that's awesome, the more likely you get to be you. I know, it's a bit of a circle. I'm Joanna, your potentialist and fairy godmother, and I wish you the very best. Thanks for coming.